Welcome back to the Old Photo Vault channel. The small ghost on the right. Funeral parlor, 1912. The room sits crowded with wreaths, their petals already curling at the edges as if tired of mourning. In the center hangs the portrait of Jonathan Hale, looking steadier in death than he ever had in life. Only when the family developed this photo did they notice the small figure on the right, a child's shape, half hidden in the flowers. Neighbors whispered that it resembled his sister Clara, who died 2 winters earlier and used to sit quietly in that very corner while waiting for him to come home. The longer you stare, the more her tilted head seems to regard Jonathan's picture with a patient, practiced devotion. No one alive saw her that day. Yet the image suggests she never really left. And the faint smudge near her feet looks almost like she was stepping closer. The woman in white behind the wall. Parlor room, 1908. The parlor looks tidy enough. Every frame hung with the punctual care of someone who dislikes disruptions. Eleanor Finch sits on the sofa, her posture a little too still, as if she's waiting for a cue no one else can hear. Only after the photograph was developed did the second figure appear. A pale woman drifting upward from the wallpaper, her outline soft but unmistakably human. Neighbors later claimed it resembled Margaret, Eleanor's older sister, who died suddenly the previous spring. The faint tilt of the ghostly head seems directed toward Eleanor, as though checking whether she's managing without her. And the curtain near that shape appears to lift slightly, despite no open window. If you look long enough, it feels like Margaret is deciding whether to step fully into the room. The face in her veil. Wedding studio, 1915. Annabelle Kerr posed as any quiet bride would, her hands steady on the bouquet, her eyes lowered in practiced modesty. The veil, soft and cloud-like, should have hidden nothing but light. Yet, in the developed photograph, a faint human face presses through the folds. Cheek, brow, and a suggestion of lips hovering just above her temple. The photographer insisted no one else stood close enough to cast a reflection, let alone a full expression. Annabelle later recognized the outline as her cousin Lydia, who died months earlier and had once promised she'd stand beside her at the altar. The more you stare, the more that face seems to lean inward, listening, and the fabric near Annabelle's ear lifts slightly, as if someone were whispering a reminder she'd rather forget. The shape above her head. Wooded clearing, 2021. I only meant to take a few quick shots. The clearing was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you lower your voice without knowing why. She knelt in the grass exactly as I asked, but her eyes followed me like she was waiting for something else to arrive. When I checked the preview, I noticed a blur above her bonnet. Soft at first, like breath on glass. But the more I zoomed in, the more it tightened into the faint shape of a face, hovering just inches above her. I remember asking if someone had been standing behind her, and she only shook her head, too slowly as though listening. Now, each time I open the photo, the face seems a little clearer, a little closer, as if it's learning how to be seen. The figure in the armor frame. Storage warehouse, 2009. I was cataloging old props in the back of the warehouse when I found the iron shell standing open, its spikes catching the overhead lights like dull teeth. It was only a museum replica, someone had assured me, though they wouldn't say who built it or why it had been stored so far from the exhibits. As I raised my camera, a pale outline drifted into the metal frame beside it. Thin, uncertain, like someone trying to remember how to stand. I thought it was a reflection until the shape leaned forward, its round eyes fixed on the open chamber. The air around me tightened, as though the room were waiting for a decision. In the photo, the figure looks almost curious, a guest examining a place it once knew. And each time I look again, it seems to stand a little more inside the frame than outside it. The boy on the clock, saloon interior, 1910. Visitors always noticed the tall wooden clock behind the bar, though no one paid much attention to the blur perched on top of it. Only after the photograph was developed did the shape resolve into a small boy, knees drawn up, his face pale in the grainy light. Regulars swore no child had ever been allowed behind the counter, let alone up near the clock's heavy crown. Some said he looked like Tommy Wade, the owner's son, who drowned in the river the previous spring and was known for climbing anything he shouldn't. The men in the picture keep talking, unaware of the slight tilt of the boy's head, as if he's listening. And the longer you look, the more his outline sharpens, like he's settling in for the evening. The face in the curtain. Empty bedroom, 2022. I didn't even mean to take the photo. My hands were shaking too hard after hearing the glass shatter behind me. I only wanted proof of what I thought I'd seen, something to tell myself later that the room hadn't shifted the way it felt. When the flash went off, I swear I was alone, crawling toward the doorway just to get out. But on the curtain, high above me, a face appeared in the developed image. Pale, stretched thin, as if pressed from the other side of the fabric. I don't remember looking up that night, yet its eyes seemed fixed right on me. And every time I study the photo, the folds of the curtain look a little tighter, like something inside is trying to push through. The Third Sister, Portrait Studio, 1894. The photographer intended nothing more elaborate than a formal portrait of the Whitcomb twins, their matching dresses buttoned with careful precision. Yet, when the plate was developed, a third figure surfaced between them, paler, softer, as though the light hesitated to let her fully form. Neighbors murmured that she resembled Eliza, the twins' older sister, who died the previous winter after a sudden fever. The living girls stand stiffly, staring straight ahead. But the faint girl seems to lean toward them, her hands almost touching theirs on the little table. The background behind her warps slightly, as if the room struggled to hold her shape. And the more closely one studies the image, the more Eliza's outline sharpens, like she's reclaiming her place in the family that moved on without her. The light on the statue. Abandoned attic, 1978. I found the statue by accident, wedged between rotting boards and a webbed tangle of cloth that crumbled when I touched it. The air up there felt colder than the rest of the house, like the room was holding its breath. When I raised my flashlight, a thin streak of light slid across the statue's chest, moving, not reflecting, as if it chose its own direction. I knew it was only plaster, but something in the bowed head and quiet smile felt awake, almost aware of me. The dust around it stirred, even though I stood perfectly still. And for a moment, the attic didn't seem abandoned at all, but filled with a kind of waiting. I left quickly, though I swear the light followed me to the stairs. The shape by the sink. Country kitchen, 1996. The kitchen looked as ordinary as any old farmhouse room, with its worn blue cabinets and sunlit window crowded by potted herbs. But when the family developed this photo, a small white shape appeared near the sink, rounded, child-high, and blurred like breath on cold glass. Neighbors whispered it resembled Samuel, the youngest son who had slipped on the back steps years earlier and never fully woke again. In the picture, the chairs sit undisturbed. The shadows fall exactly where they should. Yet the little form seems to lean forward, as if reaching for a cup left on the counter. The dog in the foreground appears to be staring at it, ears taut, and the longer one studies the image, the more the shape looks like it's turning, almost ready to face the camera. The figure behind the tree. Living room. Christmas, 1974. At first glance, the photograph is nothing more than a cheerful holiday snapshot. A tiny dog in a red cap, a crowded little tree, the soft clutter of a family's December evening. But behind the tree, in the darker half of the room, a tall figure stands half-faded into the wall, its face pale and oddly expressionless. No guest had been in that corner when the picture was taken. The family remembers the space being empty except for an old radiator. The dog seems to stare just past the camera, ears slightly pinned, as if it noticed something long before the film caught it. The ornaments near the right side of the tree lean in an unnatural way, as though stirred by a draft that touched only one part of the room. And the longer one looks, the clearer the figure becomes, as if it's standing still, only because someone finally sees it. The angel above the tree. Parlor room, Christmas, 1912. The family had gathered in their Sunday best, pleased to have the camera mark another December before the new year arrived. The children fussed over ribbons. The parents watched with that quiet, practiced patience. And no one looked toward the ceiling. Only when the plate was developed did the figure appear. An airy, half-formed shape hovering above the Christmas tree. Its arms stretched as if adjusting an ornament no one remembered hanging. Some said it resembled Clara, the eldest daughter who died the previous spring, known for insisting the star always sat just right. In the photograph, the family seems blissfully unaware, yet the branches at the top of the tree bend slightly upward, like they're lifting to meet her touch. And the longer one studies the image, the more the figure seems to lean forward, as though she's trying to join the celebration she once led. The Boy by the Tombstone, City Cemetery, 1889. The two women posed stiffly beside the grave, their black dresses blending into the fog that always seemed to gather in that corner of the cemetery. They were grieving sisters, visiting the marker of young William Preston, whose name was newly carved into the stone. No one noticed anything unusual during the portrait session. The photographer swore the path behind them was empty, but for overgrown grass. Yet, in the developed image, a faint figure of a boy stands just to the right of the tombstone. Small, blurred, and facing the women as though waiting to be acknowledged. His outline tilts slightly, almost timidly, as if he's stepped too close. And the longer one looks, the more his shape seems to sharpen, like he's trying to understand why they can see the stone, but not him. The shape between the crosses, Hilltop Graveyard, 2003. The graveyard was already uneasy at night, its crosses leaning at angles that made the ground feel restless. The photographer had gone there only to test a new flash, expecting nothing more than overexposed stone and drifting mist. But when the picture developed, a tall, bowed figure emerged between the markers, thinner than any living person, its head hanging as though it were reading the names carved beneath it. No wind had been blowing, yet the flowers near its feet tilt toward the shape, as if pulled by a quiet current. The surrounding darkness seems to gather around its outlines, trying hard not to let go. And the longer one studies the image, the more the figure appears to shift slightly forward, like it's preparing to step into the row of graves it once shared. The face in the far row. Graveyard Edge, 2020. I only meant to take a quick picture. Just something to laugh about later. Standing among crooked crosses as the sky turned that strange purple before night. The air felt still enough, though every fence rattled faintly, like the wind was choosing which grave to visit. When the flash went off, I didn't see anything but my own shadow stretching toward the stones. But in the photo, far behind me, a round, pale face hangs above a headstone, staring straight at the lens as if it had been waiting for the light. Its features are too smooth, too neat, like a mask someone forgot to remove. And the longer I look at the image, the more its head seems to tilt, just slightly, just enough to make me feel it finally knows my name. The child in the hallway, basement level, 1987. They thought the house was quiet that night, the kind of deep quiet that settles after everyone's gone to bed. The camera was only meant to capture the newly finished hallway, fresh paneling, new carpet, proof the renovation hadn't been a waste. But when the photo developed, a small figure stood in the dark doorway at the far end. A child-sized shape in an old-fashioned dress, its face pale and without any clear features. No children had been visiting, and the door behind the figure had been shut all evening. The toys stacked on the right look untouched, yet the shadow at the child's feet seems to stretch toward them like an old habit. And the longer one studies the picture, the more the figure appears to lean forward, as though it's waiting for someone to walk down the hall and notice it. The face in the peeling wall. Abandoned chapel, 1974. The chapel had been empty for years, long enough for the paint to peel into strange shapes and the benches to sag like tired ribs. Anyone passing by would think nothing lived there anymore. The caretaker, Mrs. Hanley, stepped inside each dusk to check the roof, though she never lingered. She disliked the way the walls seemed to lean inward, listening. Today, she noticed the stain high on the right wall, a darker patch shaped almost like a face, tilted slightly toward the altar. She told herself it must have always been there, though she'd walked past it 100 times. As she backed out, the air thickened, the silence rising behind her like breath. And in the dimming light, the stain appeared to have shifted just enough to watch her leave. The shape beside the doll, guest bedroom, 1966. The woman in the picture, Mrs. Lorraine, had just finished arranging her prized satin bedspread, smoothing each wrinkle with the pride of someone who kept her home spotless. The doll, dressed like a tiny debutante, was her favorite keepsake. She insisted it brightened the whole room. But when the photo was developed, a pale, drifting shape appeared beside the doll, rising from the bed like someone had only just stood up. Mrs. Lorraine swore no one else was in the room, and the photographer remembered the air feeling oddly warm, as if from a recent presence. The doll's painted eyes seemed to tilt toward the light, almost grateful. And the longer one looks, the more the shape resembles a small figure bending close, like a visitor reluctant to leave its old place on the pillows. The figure on the balcony, Historic Hotel, 2023. The hotel looked harmless enough at night, washed in warm lights that made the stone glow like something well-loved and long-kept. Guests on the lower floors laughed over late dinners, unaware of anything unusual above them. But when the photo was reviewed later, a lone figure appeared on the second balcony. Thin, still, and much too pale to be caught by the yellow bulbs strung across the railings. No one had been assigned that room. The key was still hanging at the front desk. The shadows around the figure bend inward, as if the darkness is trying to hold it in place. And if you stare up at that balcony for too long, it begins to feel as though the figure is staring back, patient and certain you'll return to look again. The face in the old stone. Night Cemetery, 2011. The photographer had only meant to capture the strange tilt of the broken headstone, the way it leaned as if trying to rise from the ground. The night was windless, heavy, the kind that makes every sound feel closer than it should. But in the developed image, a pale face appears on the front of the nearest stone. Features softened, eyes half-shaped, almost as if pressing outward from beneath the surface. No trick of the flash could explain the way the expression seems to hover between sorrow and recognition. The nearby grass bends toward the stone, though nothing else in the cemetery shows a hint of movement. And the longer one studies the picture, the more the faint face seems to deepen, like someone below is slowly remembering how to look up. And that's where we'll leave tonight's collection of strange faces in quiet places. If you saw something in these photos that I didn't mention, tell me in the comments. Names, shapes, little details other people might miss. If these stories followed you a bit too far into the dark, please like this video, share it with someone who won't sleep anyway, and subscribe so you don't face the next one alone. Turn on the notification bell, because the next time a ghost shows up in an ordinary picture, you'll want to be here to look at it with us. Until then, Check your own photos and decide which figures were really standing there.